Today's episode is sponsored by the How to Start Something Accelerator, and I'm so excited to be here with Annalise Stack. And Annalise, I'm not even going to start with your business. I am so much want to know about this story about your kids. You had children with severe asthma and you could not figure out what was going on. Tell us what happened.
Hi, Pam. Yeah, we had two daughters who, at the age of 4 and 2, developed really severe asthma. They had probably developed a little bit earlier than that, but we found ourselves in a pattern where we were frequent flyers at the emergency room. They were on constant steroids, and nebulizers, and antibiotics, and I just needed to figure out what was the root cause, right? They couldn't always be medicated. My grandfather was a doctor and extremely anti uh, constant use of antibiotics. So I went to all of the resources that were out there, the Children's Environmental Health Center, and different organizations that dealt with children's health, and found great information about pulmonary issues and asthma and possible ways that it can stem from the environment, really, and dug into a link between children's environmental health and their home environment or their indoor environment, and found myself becoming educated, getting an MBA in sustainability, becoming LEED certified to figure out what building materials, environmental issues such as mold, things in our built environment could be causing this issue.
So you went and got your MBA in sustainability on this journey of like trying to figure out what was going on with your kids.
I did. So I was working for Starwood Hotels. I was in their global corporate office, and we were in the process of launching a couple of green hotels, one that was called Element. So I was really learning from some of the design team and some of the builders about what makes something green, which is the word that we used back then. How do we make an indoor space healthy?
And
It,
when did you know that you were kind of on your own to solve this? Like,
you know, I had become part of an organization at that point called Greening Our Children, and it was really a group of moms whose children had different issues, different health issues. Some of them were developmental delays, some of them were asthma, some of them were foodborne allergies. There was a whole host of them. And all of us were looking for a little bit more information from the medical community that really just didn't exist. So we
okay.
were able to do a couple of fundraising events that raised money for Mount Sinai's Children's Environmental Health Center to really dig into some environmental things, asthma being probably their main focus at the time.
What did you start doing differently? So you're getting all this education. What did you start doing differently with your children and at home? Like, what happened next?
It was really experimental. The only way I could figure out what the trigger could be was by eliminating small things, right? So my first was to take all of our cleaning products out of the house and see if there was maybe some chemical or irritant in the cleaning products that was triggering them. So I changed to all non-toxic cleaning products. I would say it made a difference in the sense that they might not have been wheezing all day, but the fundamental issue was still there. We were still on the nebulizer. And the nebulizer is a steroid, which really does impact day-to-day activities. It makes them
Right.
hyper, they can't focus as much. Um, we were using that literally all night. As I saw a little bit of improvement as we got rid of some of the chemicals, we were about to do a renovation on our house to begin with. So I started meeting with LEED certified architects and builders and people who were in this business and said, okay, if I wanted to create an extremely healthy home, where do I need to start? So piecing together everything that was out there, there was still a gap in what the architects and the building community understood about healthy building materials and children's health. So I went back to school again and became a LEED certified professional within the real estate community and started doing the research on things as basic as insulation. You know, there's flame retardants and formaldehyde in insulation. So that insulation is coming through our vents. So
Mm.
things that really we don't think about when we're moving into a new house or we're renovating. I had to take it down to the studs. Literally, we did. We took the house down to the studs. We built an addition and I used as much reclaimed wood as I could. I used all non-toxic paints, VOC-free sealants, sustainable wood for the kitchen, sustainable cabinets, all of the paints. I used Claire's paint and a combination of Benjamin Moore that was completely non-toxic and made this house as healthy and non-toxic as I could
So
with
you
the knowledge.
created a whole new addition that was,
Mhm.
let's call it toxic free. Had
Yeah.
you found in that process, had you found mold as you were moving through the house or?
You know, we actually didn't find mold until much later. And luckily, at the time of the renovation, I put in home house purification systems and a water purification system, which is really my go-to now because the indoor air quality is probably the most important factor in creating a healthy home. That really did help, at least in their bedrooms, to have good quality air pumping through all the time. But as we dug deeper into the renovation and got down to the foundation, this house was built in the late 1700s. It was an old carriage house. And it turned out that there was mold so far behind the original stones that if we hadn't taken the house down, we never ever would have found it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, a mother's a mother's journey, basically taking the house down to the studs and rebuilding. So, when did you start seeing results and what did you attribute it to?
So I would say, and a full disclosure, throughout this entire time, we were working with really professional pulmonologists, right? This is not something that I did alone. I did it with an entire team of people that were very invested in my children's health. I would say 2 years into this. So we started the renovation in 2010-ish, I want to say. 2 years later, my youngest was completely off the nebulizer.
Wow.
never to be never to be used again. The occasional time she will use an inhaler if it's a sports induced asthma, but the everyday respiratory issues that she was experiencing completely disappeared. And fast forward, which I think is the most interesting piece of this, is we had a third child. So in 2013, our third child was born. She is now 12 and she has never had a respiratory issue. She has never had asthma. She never experienced anything that our first two girls experienced.
And
And
you
the only
attribute that
difference
to, yeah, the only difference.
the only difference was the living environment, right? Were the changes that we made to the house. And probably as a mom who had gone down this journey, I've since got a certificate in wellness and biohacking because I'm fascinated by this journey too. The LEED certification, the years of developing this research and writing materials on it, I was able to also use that information when I was expecting Charlotte, right? So sometimes we don't think about the things that we're putting into our system or the environment that we find ourselves in while we're expecting, or even before we're expecting, how that affects our children.
So talk to me for a minute. Sum up what you think are the most important things for the home environment that you're now managing that have made the difference for your third child. And then what do you think are the top things for an expectant mother to be mindful of?
So I think that the first things that I do when I'm working with a young client, and I'm going to say somebody who's expecting their first child, the first thing we're going to do is go in and test your indoor air quality. I want to see what your level of VOCs are. I want to see if there's anything in this air like mold, right? Mold is the most toxic thing we can put in our systems, and it causes a huge amount of problems later on. So we at least want to test for that. Once we if there's a mold, I am certainly not going to do the mold myself. I'm going to hire a company that's going to come in and they're going to redeem the mold problem, get rid of it and start over. We're going to put in some new drywall. We're going to paint your house in completely non-toxic paint. It's really important that an expecting mom or a young baby is not breathing in VOCs, any kind of toxic chemicals that comes with paint. I'm also going to make sure that the baby's nursery is non-toxic. What does that mean? The last thing you want a baby to do is to sleep on a crib mattress that has formaldehyde in it or flame retardants, right? Because their little face is on that mattress and they're breathing in those fumes. So we're going to put in non-toxic building materials, non-toxic mattress. We're going to have a crib and baby furniture that doesn't off gas. It can be something that was in the family for 20 years or something that you buy on a Facebook marketplace. It just can't be something that was recently painted. The VOCs do dissipate after months, after a couple of years. So even if that crib wasn't non-toxic to start with, it is after a couple of years, it's off gassed. We're certainly going to keep those windows open a little bit and make sure that any chemicals that could be in any of your products, whether it's a recliner or cushions, are going to off gas before the baby is born. We're going to make sure that there is, if you can't do a full house purification system, we're going to put one in the baby's room, at least to make sure that that air is as pure as possible. And we're also going to monitor that air. So we're going to put in a little system, whether it's plug-in or a panel that we put on your wall, that's really going to monitor what that air quality is like.
Okay, both. It's fascinating, and we're going to get into this deeper. Um, so, this journey, when did you, in your own journey, working on solving this for your children, when did you start to see the bigger issue, like that other people, that this was not just about your children?
Yeah, I think that as I got involved in some of these organizations and we were hosting benefits, um, we hosted a one very large lunch where there were probably 400 people attending when I was expecting Charlotte. And as I was talking about what I was doing in our house and the changes we had made, I found these moms coming up to me and saying, "Oh my gosh, my child has severe asthma, or my child has some issues that have not been diagnosed yet, but I do know that there's something there. We just can't pinpoint what it is." And I was getting constant pings on my email and people calling me and basically asking me, "Can you put together a how-to guide? Can you write something that explains your journey, whether it's a blog post, just any information that you can share with us? Where do we start?" Right? It's so overwhelming to know that your child has health issues, and the medical profession is so well trained in doing what they do. Each doctor has its own lane. To see the situation holistically, from what we're feeding them to what they're surrounded by, what environment they're sleeping in, what their school environment looks like, what their daycare looks like. As a mom who's probably working or involved in their own life and keeping the day-to-day survival of a family, it is really hard to know where to start that journey.
Yeah. So,
But it
so that kind of takes us to when you started the program. You were already a successful real estate agent. You came in, what was motivating you? What did you want to build or create right then?
so I had launched this business, Roan Skye, in 2010 is when I had the LLC. And I really kind of left it at this place where I was consulting and working one-on-one with clients while managing a real estate career, which was taking off and becoming a lot busier. So in 2020, and the world had really kind of stood still. So I wasn't consulting in people's homes as much. I was still doing a ton of real estate, but people were asking me, okay, I'm buying this house. It's sight unseen because it's COVID, right? And we're coming out of the city. And what can I do to make this house my own? What can I do to make it healthy? It was kind of this perfect storm of me coming across how to start something and thinking, okay, I've got this concept that I'm really, really passionate about. It's been a little bit put on the back burner because I'm raising 3 children. I have this real estate career that's becoming busier, but this is a passion of mine. It's something that's missing in the market. How do I, as one person, reach as many people as possible? And that's why I came to this program to figure, how do you scale up a service and turn it into a product, or turn it into a service that is reached by people all over the world and not just the people who live in my community?
So when you first came in, what was the idea?
The idea was to scale up my services, right? So Roan Skye, Healthy Homes. How do I get the message to any young parents out there, or expecting parents, or grandparents who are helping out with a home? How do I let all of these clients, for lack of a better word, know what the first steps are? How do you create my little green room? How do you create the most healthy sanctuary that you can put your families in? How do I do that as one person? Is there scalability? How do I put structure around this business? How do I balance it with what I'm already doing? I looked at,
So what you had done for yourself, how could I do that for other families?
yeah.
In in a nutshell. So you come in and you start working on this process, this de-risking process. Tell us what happened. Like, what did you do first and what happened?
So I would say that the first steps working with some of my coaches was getting back out there in the market and testing what my business concept was going to be. Meeting with young moms, meeting with people who would want to be moms down the line, meeting with people who owned daycare facilities, meeting with principals of schools, right? And of course, some of this was done remotely at that time. But ultimately finding out, what are people's pain points? What is it that, what's the one issue that you haven't addressed or you can't figure out how to address? What's the first thing that you want to do as a young family moving into a space? And so many of the responses that I got back were so similar that at least I knew from working with the coaches, working with the people in the program, working with you, is okay, this is something that people are interested in. This is a solid business. How do we scale it up? How do we make it practical? How do we put the business parameters around it? How do we monetize it in some capacity?
So talk a little bit about that. So the first iteration of this, the solution was, what did you start doing?
So the first thing I did was meet with potential clients and look at their space, right? Whenever I could go in there, we tested the air quality. We really figured out what they wanted to solve in the house, or what they wanted to create, or what their vision was for the most perfect living space. And then I would come back, and 24 hours later, I would put together a plan for them. I would write it out in steps, and I would recommend products and then give them some different options, right? Either you can take this whole report that I have written for you and you can hand this off to your designer or to your builder, or we will work together and I'll manage your project, whatever that is, and figure out how to kind of grow your project. It's going to incorporate things that you never thought about doing. And are you prepared for kind of the level of work that it's going to entail?
So you went from talking to people to actually selling some of these services while you're in the program.
Yeah.
And what did you start learning as you started actually providing the service?
My biggest takeaway was it is really hard to be one person in 10 places at one time when you're already running a business, right? I'm already a real estate business with a solid career, and that is my day-to-day job, right? That is what I do for a living. But this piece of it was so important that the first
Explain to me the moment you realized something was broken or that there was something off. This wasn't quite working like you intended.
as my days got busier working with real estate clients and I'm doing paperwork and I'm going to showings, and then I have these young families calling me and saying, can you be at my house in Brooklyn tomorrow? And somebody else calling and saying, can you meet me in Ridgefield, Connecticut tomorrow? Like, I I can't. I physically can't. My limitations are there's only so many hours in a day. I don't want to do something. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be thorough, whether you're my real estate client or you're my Roan Skye client. And I think one of the really interesting things about this business is people kept saying, well, why don't you hire somebody else? Well, there's a real knowledge transfer here. This is my journey, right? It is, I have put so many years of research into it. The my why is so important to me that without that why, you cannot build a business.
Oh
So,
my, isn't it true? Like people always say, well, someone's going to steal your idea.
no, it is not possible. And
So, talk to me about this idea of the value because you have so much value to transfer. When did you start to see that how you were managing this service, there was something off on the value?
it is almost impossible to monetize an education, right? We can monetize how many hours I spend with you. We can monetize all of the products that I'm sourcing for your house. It is very hard to monetize the time that I'm spending giving you all of the information that I have spent the last, I mean, I started doing this when my oldest was 4, she's now 20, right? So it has taken me 16 years of being in this market and getting a lot of education in the meantime.
So, remind us, you were charging people what for what? Kind of
I
what was
was
the
really
service
charging
exchange?
hourly, and there were also times that I wasn't charging because I was working with one of my clients who might have been my real estate client, right? So I was already working with them on a home sale. And then after they closed, I was helping them to renovate. So a lot of the information that I was providing was I could not monetize. And anything that I did was an hourly rate, which at the end of the day didn't make sense because yes, I might
What do you
have
think it was equal to? Like you were charging them for what do you think?
let's say I was charging $300 an hour and the project ended up taking 3 months, right? I can't break that down into an hourly cost because a lot of what I'm doing is in the evening. I'm sourcing, I'm writing reports, I'm calling experts, I'm talking to architects, I'm talking to builders. I basically became a contractor for your project.
So you're learning this, so keep walking us through. So you're testing, you start giving the service, and then you have the realization what?
This has to be more than a service. It's got to turn into a product.
Talk to us about that.
So after a year of going out to market, talking to as many people as I can, and I'm going to keep this really to my expecting moms and to my new parents, to that audience right now, even though there's a bigger audience here, but we're going to talk to this one. All of my clients were looking for a very similar thing. How do I start my baby's life in the healthiest environment possible? So working with all of the business coaches and literally buying every product available on the market that addresses baby nurseries, I came up with the idea of my little green room in a box, which has, again, various iterations. But the idea is all the basics that you need to create this healthy nursery. I'm going to give it to you in a box because one of my biggest takeaways was that parents of that come in so many different styles, right? There's not one style of parent, but the one thing that everyone has in common is they dream about building a baby nursery. They've thought about that for years. What is this going to look like? What's the theme going to be? How is it going to match my baby's personality?
Yeah,
And
so specifically, so it sounds like as you're going through the process, you're starting to see that there is you're getting validation again and again. They want the same thing. So you pivot during the program to go, oh, I could scale this to a product.
absolutely, absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit. So what happened as a result right there?
Right at that time, we came up with the idea of this product, one of the coaches and I, and we were taking this offline and really hashing this out into so many different variations, right? The first variation started, okay, I'm going to send everybody a crib and I'm going to put all this material on it and I'm going to send all the bedding and all the pieces. And then I went to the organic mattress companies and set up this great situation and we were ready to go. And then I went to go mail the mattress and the mailing cost was more expensive than the mattress.
Yeah.
So
Start small, test, look, oh, this cost is too great. So then you rapidly iterate it to.
So then we took the mattress piece out and put all of the accessories that would go with the mattress, right? So
So, how did this process of iterating and de risking result in what you have today?
I probably went through 5 different variations of this while in the program. And every time I came up with a new concept, it went back out to market. And I got the feedback of the coaches, but I also got the feedback of the fellow entrepreneurs that I was taking this program with who were instrumental in this because they gave me feedback on every piece of the process and their experiences were so vast that if you have some type of consistency in such a large range of people, you know you're onto something that makes sense for the public.
So, 5 or 6 iterations, and you get to My Little Green Room, the product,
Yeah.
which is radically different than you walk in with the service business, but this process of de risking leads you to the product. How did that process change you, how you see yourself?
I think that the anybody who's trying to launch a business struggles with imposter syndrome, right? Why should my business be successful? How do I know that I am an expert in this field? And I think through working with the right people and getting this product tested again and again and again, it started, my message changed to why not me, right? Why should it not be my business? I have put in the time, I've put in the work, I have the passion for this. It's something that is so important to me that I know that there's something in here, and I always did for the 16 years that I've been kind of building it up and changing it and going from one business partner that didn't work out because, as I said, the knowledge transfer just doesn't work. If this is not somebody's passion, you can't transfer that knowledge over to somebody else. So I think it's just
So you
it's learning.
describe yourself today not as an imposter, but as what?
I consider myself a guru on creating healthy homes, right? And my definition of healthy homes has moved also from creating the organic baby nurseries, which is really my sweet spot, right? That is where I believe this starts, putting the newest member of your family into the healthiest environment that we can create. We can't control what
Right.
happens to our children when they leave the house. We can control what happens. But throughout this journey, and I'm now 5 years out from taking this program, right? So my little green room is there and is launching and the product exists. And as I continue to grow this and I continue to do research, well, there's another client that has emerged and another group of people who are just as interested in healthy homes, but in a completely different way. So
Okay,
now,
so before you dive in there, tell me
yeah,
about this because I'm still dying. You came in as a real estate agent, right?
yeah,
You had this vision of doing something in the healthy home space, and it starts out as a service. It iterates during the program to this product. But
yep.
at the same time, your real estate service business undergoes a transformation. What did going through this process do to your real estate business?
You know, it was such an interesting time, and it was also a unique time because I did do this during the COVID years, right? So real estate just became a very different landscape. But I was so focused, the kind of validation in a sense for Roan and Skye came a little bit from COVID, which was such an interesting twist because we were now talking publicly about what I had been speaking about for a very long time, about the importance of indoor air quality. Well, by talking about this and by talking about home renovating and talking about moving from one environment that was possibly more urban at the time to people moving out and wanting more space and more outdoor space, grew my real estate business significantly to the point where I moved from one brokerage firm to another. And again,
Significantly, like from what to what? Give us an idea.
I probably, I probably moved from selling starter homes more into the very luxury space, which is where I am now. Um, and partly that's because of the market that I happen to live in. I also work for a great boutique firm and I have a lot of staff to help me, but my business really scaled up volume wise, but my client also changed. And
And we go back to how is this tied to how you started to see yourself differently and what you might have been doing now, the changes you made in terms of how you were running your real estate business because
mhm,
of what you were going through in the program.
yeah, I think that the program validates that you are the expert of whatever field it is you're trying to get in. You cannot grow a business if you have any self-doubt about it, if you doubt your skills. We all make the mistake of saying, "Oh, I can't launch this, or I can't put my name out there, or I can't do the social media, or I can't do the webinar, I can't build a product until I have it so perfectly
Mm.
wrapped up, then I'll put it to market." That can't be the way to do it. You've got to get it to market in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a service or a product, and then refine it as the market and your clients tell you what that market wants, right? Your buyers will dictate to you what it is that they're looking for. And as long as you are prepared to pivot, everywhere you need to pivot, your business grows with that. So the business that you start with and the business that you are going to have 5 years later are an entirely different thing. And with the self-confidence that comes from seeing that your business has been validated, it's going to organically grow. And I think a lot of that is the result of meeting people in this program who also have grown successful businesses, many who I still talk to today, and working with you and working with my coaches, working with Anne specifically was such a really enormous help to me that that validation leads to really solidifying your why. That why can turn into your business. And then it leads to, okay, why not me? Someone else is going to do it, yet it's me that has the passion. It's me that has the skills. I've got everything that it takes to grow this business to the next level. And you've got to bet on yourself at that point.
Absolutely. Why not me? I love that. So all this testing leads you to your company today, Roan and Skye, and the product now is available. And can you give us the name of the product again?
Yeah, so the product actually hasn't been available. It is just launching. The product is called My Little Green Room in a Box, and the website is My Little Green Room. And it is, there are different variations of it. It is as custom as somebody wants it to be, or as generic as somebody wants it to be, right? There's a scale.
Well, I have the perfect person for it right now. I know an expecting mom that needs it, and I'm going to go over there right after this interview and find it. So, somebody is probably watching this right now that is working on an idea, has a dream, and feels stuck. What would you tell them?
You know, I think that when there is something that you are so passionate about, you can bury that deep down and say, I'm going to leave it on the shelf and I'm going to continue doing X, Y, or Z. But whatever that passion is, keeps coming back up. In some form, you're going to see it and you're going to recognize it and you're going to hear yourself every couple of months saying, oh my gosh, this is really what I want to be doing. So even if you're doing something else, you've got another full-time job or you're raising children, if there is something burning in you that you have to explore it, right? You have to at least see whether or not the concept is valid. You need to be prepared that it's not going to happen overnight. It is a process. It takes a team of people. But if you don't explore it, it is always going to nag at you. It is always going to be in the background as something that was meant to be and it didn't happen. And that's a regret that I don't think any of us want to live with.
You said something interesting. Time. I've heard you talk about timing before. What do you tell people about the whole timing of how fast or how slow this happens?
When I first launched this business, I launched it not quickly, but I had my first concept of it and I didn't validate it the way I did when I worked through this program, right? I didn't get the feedback that I needed before I launched it. I think it is such an expansive concept to open a business that the financials are not going to make sense overnight, right? It takes time, especially if you're doing a product that is going to cost you money to make it or to deliver it. It takes a while to get that money back. It can take 10 years to build a business the way you want to build it. But whatever your concept is, just launch it and refine it. Just every year refine it a little bit more. It's not going to be the reiteration that you want right away. That's going to take time, but just at least get it to market in some capacity, even if it's your side hustle. There's no reason to wait for every part of that business to be exactly the way you want it because then the opportunity is gone.
When you think of where you're at today, because you're 5 years down the road, you've got lots of business opportunities, right? You're not the same woman you were when you came in. What did the de-risking process and how did what did how to start something? How was its impact on where you're at today?
I mean, it was, as somebody who went through an MBA, which was an extremely valuable program, I got more out of how to start something because it was so hands-on and it's so thorough. You can't get through the program without reaching every step. And there are parts of a business that none of us want to dive into, right? We don't like budgets. We don't like profit and losses, especially if we're creative people. And at the end, there's this beautiful product. But in order to get there, you've really got to dig into the financials. You've got to dig into what your customer looks like. What does the marketing look like? Where are you going to source? How are you going to ship? When you go through the program, you break that down piece by piece, and every step along the way has to be validated, or you can't move on to the next step. So I think it makes us explore our businesses in such a thorough way that it doesn't allow you to jump into market without having the 25 steps in between to get from A to B.
What do you do now as a CEO? What are your habits and kind of what's your practice? You mentioned something new is coming up that maybe you didn't do 5 or 6 years ago, but it's kind of your whole practices as an entrepreneur have evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I treat my business like a 9 to 5. So my day is really structured, right? And a lot of that is taken up by my real estate, but I have my days broken into my tasks. I know how I want to start my day. I have my morning ritual. I do my meditation every morning. That's how it starts. I live a life that reflects what I am trying to give my clients, right? I take wellness very seriously for me and my family. And it's a constant research. It is constantly knowing what is going on in the market, what's going on in the health market, what's going on in the baby market, what's going on in the world around us. We have to know economically where the world is at. So my day is really, really, really structured. And there are certain tasks that I set for myself within the week that I have to do. There are certain days a week that I do a social post. I'm working on a webinar series. I'm working on writing this book that's going to go into my little green room. So every day it evolves just a little bit. It gets 1% better every day. And that comes from the structure that I have put into my day now.
When you look back at life as an employee and now, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh boy. First of all, I would say you cannot be a great leader if you have not been an employee first, right?
Mm.
We have got to learn from the people who lead us. And some of the people that I worked with, I started in private banking and then I went to Starwood. And some of the most amazing mentors that I've ever had in my life came from those companies. They taught me so much about business and the structure that goes into a day, right? Some of them were CEOs of companies and still managed to run 10 miles every day. You can't, I couldn't even think about launching a business if I hadn't the experience that I had to get to this point. But I would also say that the freedom that you feel having your own business, you cannot measure that. And it's not the freedom of time because I work more hours than I've ever worked before. I am juggling 3 kids still, one of them who's in college, but I still have to worry about her on a daily basis. I haven't created more time in that sense, but the freedom to build that business and turn it into whatever you want to turn it into. I'm just at the beginning of Roan Skye, and the idea that the opportunities there are limitless is not something that I experienced when I was working for somebody else, because somebody else is dictating your future, right? When you jump in and you launch your own business, you are completely responsible for what happens next. And that is both good and bad. It's the positive and the negative of being an entrepreneur.
If you had one line sentence to describe what you love most about being an entrepreneur,
Opportunity, the opportunity to not just build your business and build this vision that you've had. It's also the opportunity to meet people every day. Every day, I have a conversation with somebody who would never have crossed my path if it wasn't for me being in this business, whether it's a real estate client, whether it's a client of Roan Skye. Like, it's evolving every day.
before we go to questions, I got to go back one more time to the whole health thing.
Yeah.
So, if you were making a checklist for those of us that maybe aren't in the stage where we're having a nursery, and you were going to make a quick checklist for us to think about our environments or our overall health, because we're living in a time of, wow, a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, let's say, global chaos. What are some of the things you're thinking about now that all of us need to be thinking about in terms of being healthy?
I think your space has to be a sanctuary for you. It's
Mm.
got to be somewhere that you can restore and revitalize, right? We're all out there in a really chaotic world with things that we cannot control. The one thing we can control is when we open our front door, whether you live in an apartment or a townhouse or you rent or you own, doesn't matter. Once you open that door, you want to be able to take a deep breath and know that this is your space. It's going to optimize your health. It's going to recharge you. You give everything in life your best, right? Your maximum input. You have to be able to fully recharge yourself to do that again the next day. So I would say the most important things are your indoor air quality. Just put in a portable indoor air purifier if you're not in a place where you can do a whole house system. Put a water purification system under your faucet if you can't do a whole house. When you're about to paint, use a paint that has no VOCs. You do not want any of those fumes in your house. They're really, really toxic. Open your windows, right? Have that fresh air in if you're not in a very urban polluted environment. Just make sure that there's some sunlight and there's some fresh air coming in, and make that space your own. Make it a comfortable place that you can really relax and restore, and make your bedroom a sanctuary. If you can go one step further and put your blackout curtains and make your mattress organic so you don't have any fumes, that's fabulous. But if you're not at that step yet, just start with your air quality, right? What you're breathing is so important.
Ooh, juicy. So we could stay here and talk forever. I know there's some questions, so um, I will say thank you, and we're all excited to check out Roan Skye and My Little Green Nursery and celebrate this next birth in your amazing entrepreneurial journey.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Pam.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a question from Ingrid. As a mom, I can't imagine going through that with my kids. Sorry, um, having health issues. How did you realize um, what you were doing for your family could actually be something somebody else would pay you for?
I think at the beginning I didn't. We're in survival mode when we're dealing with kids and a health issue. It really wasn't until I got to the point where I was working at Starwood at the time when we were building these green hotels And I realized that so much of what I was doing in my corporate workplace was similar, was mirroring what I was doing in my house. And as I was meeting more and more young moms, as I was running events, I realized that this was a pain problem for a lot of people and it needed to be solved somehow.
What surprised you about, oh, I have another one from Mary. For those of us who are currently working a full-time job like you were in real estate, how do you manage starting something and balancing everything?
You start really small. The side hustle can end up being your full-time business, but you'd never want to give up the security of what you have as a full-time job until you've really validated that your business makes sense and it can be monetized. I did really little things. I would take on just 2 clients a week, right? And I would meet them on a Saturday, or I would meet them after work. I would do a phone call. I would create a how-to guide and just structure a kind of a PDF on where I would start if I was renovating a house for somebody who was in the middle of that project. I took it on in really small doses and wouldn't commit to having 1 or 2 clients at a time. When you're working full time and you're raising children, finding the balance is really tough. You don't want to put only half of yourself out to your clients, right? So limit the amount of clients that you might have, give them your all, and just do it on a really small scale.
What's one mistake you've made that has been a really profound learning experience for you?
Oh my gosh. How many hours do I have to spend on this one, Pam? Uh, I'm going to say honestly, my biggest mistake was somebody came to me in the early days of Roan Skye and said, I want to partner with you. I want to be your business partner. I'm really interested in this. It was a disaster. And the main reason it was a disaster is because nobody shares your exact passion, right? So the way I would address a client, spend time with a client, advise a client was entirely different to the way my business partner did it. And it was not representing me at all. And my brand was suffering from that. My brand had to be about service too, right? And my background is hospitality. I give you every second that I have and will spend as much time as possible. My business partner didn't have that same philosophy. And I really had such a bad experience that I thought of putting Roan Skye on hold permanently. And I'm
Mm.
so glad that I didn't do it, but never take a business partner that's not fully aligned with your mission.
So how do you, so using that lesson going forward, if you were going to hire today, just hire, how do you, what do you, when you say aligned, what would that mean? What would you be looking for and how would you advise another entrepreneur to think about alignment and how would they vet that out or de-risk that ahead of time?
Yeah, it's got to be somebody who has a similar work ethic to you. My brand is really authentic. I don't hold back on the story of why this business started and what I had to go through with my children's health to get here.
You
You
rebuilt your whole house almost.
have,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, you are the role model for not being willing to stop at anything.
100%. I also know that there's always a solution, right? It might not happen overnight, but there's always a solution. There's no problem in life that can't be solved in some way. It might not have the outcome that you want, but there is a resolution. So one has to find it. Your business partner has to be somebody who is as motivated as you are. Your whys have to be completely aligned, even if it's just, why are you doing this? Because you need to feed your family. Okay, that's a why that's enough to get somebody out of bed in the morning and get the job done. The biggest why has to be, what is your passion for this business? Why does it make you get up in the morning? And if those two things are not aligned, regardless if your vision for the future is the same, you want to build a multi-million-dollar business, you want to create generational wealth, whatever your why is, it has got to be exactly the same.
It's really powerful on alignment. You've specifically talked about your why a couple times.
Mhm.
When you describe that or define that to another entrepreneur and the importance of it, how do you say that?
When you're dealing with children's health, it's a little bit different because I didn't come to this to start a business. I came to this to get my children off a nebulizer. So when you are motivated by something that's really outside of yourself, and especially when you have children, you you are unstoppable, right? There is nothing that is going to prevent you from finding that solution. And as I said, the solution maybe wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be. These girls were on the nebulizer for a long time. It's not as clear as you want it to be, but as you move along your journey and you see, okay, this child has spent less time on the nebulizer this week. We were able to go away for 2 nights without this nebulizer. And then fast forward 5 years later, you have another child that doesn't have health issues. Even if this had never turned into a business, the result is what I wanted. It was worth the amount of time and research and effort that I put into the journey that I started.
Yes, so fascinating. Well, as we wrap up here, is there any last thing that you would want to say to entrepreneurs out there that are on their journey?
The journey is not quick, and you've got to be committed to it, and you've got to accept the help and the advice of people around you. Talk to people who've started businesses, talk to coaches, dig into this program, take everything from the program that it has to give you because it's invaluable information. And you're working with people like Pam, who's launched businesses and knows this process from beginning to end. Take the advice from the people who have done it. Don't take the advice from people who have never done it, right? If somebody has not launched the type of business that you're planning on launching, don't ever take from them that you can't do it because they don't know and they didn't do it and they didn't try it and their business is completely different than yours. Take the advice from the people who have successfully launched a business and learned the positives and the negatives and the pitfalls and know it's a journey that's not going to happen overnight. It's an adventure. And your business might turn out being completely different than what you originally thought it was going to be.
Isn't that the truth? All right, so remind us again where we can find you if we have real estate questions, and remind us where we can find you in terms of these healthy home nursery
Yeah.
projects.
Well, you can find me at Annalise Real Estate, which is my Instagram handle, and you can DM me there any healthy home questions that you have or real estate questions. Will always answer you. And my website is mylittlegreenroom.com, and my product will be there. And again, I am always happy to answer your questions about healthy homes and about launching a business. I'm passionate about both of those things.
Thank you for spending your time with us, Annalise.
So much fun. Thank you, Pam. Thank you for all of your help.
You are welcome. And